There we go. Hello and welcome back. I hope you all had an enjoyable break. I'm here with Dele from MetiMe. Dele, what's your talk title today that you're going to be speaking about?
I'm going to talk about Web3 and the economy of self.
Excellent. Sounds good. So, people in the audience, on the right-hand side of your screen, you do have the chat feature. Do please utilize it. Drop any questions in the Q&A tabs so we can go around that later after the presentation. Remember to upvote anything that you think is relevant, you'd love answered on the stage here today. Please do use these features because they are there for you. If there's anything that resonates with you, remember you've got the reactions down at the bottom, thumbs up, hearts, emojis. Everyone loves emojis, so remember to put those out as well. And yeah, relax, have some fun, and I'll hand it over to you, Dele.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. So we're going to talk about the economy of self, which is basically a new sort of paradigm in terms of how we think about Web3 from a user-centric perspective. And ultimately, we're really going to look at the whole notions of data sovereignty and data ownership, but what does that, how can that actually work and look? So I'm going to start with a few slides. So bear with me 1 second and I will get that up. Okay, here we go. So yeah, the economy of self. So, clearly, it's, I think one of the things that I would like to start with here is landing on this concept that our data has become currency. And I think that's really important to understand because certainly it's indisputable that our data has become extremely valuable. And I would actually argue that our data has become more valuable than money. And I know that it's a complete contrary view to how data is thought about when you think about the value of data. And I'm talking about the value of data down to an individual level here. But I would argue that one of the primary reasons why a lot of the large data barren platforms give us services for free so that they can monetize us through advertising and the like is because they cannot charge us enough money to warrant us paying for those services compared to what they can make from using our data. And that's because of some of the properties of data, because data is non-rivalrous, for example. And that's very different from money in the sense that when you spend a data set or when a data set is used, it doesn't prevent it from being used again. So this non-rivalrous nature of data means that it has huge value and more value than money. And I think an important thing to have context about here as well is that money is a subset of data. Money is nothing but data. It's just basically a record of who owns what. And we see this very, very acutely now with distributed ledger technologies and cryptocurrencies. Effectively, money is just a ledger that keeps a record of who owns what quantities of it. So it is data. But when we think about data in the context of our personal data, it's a much richer data set than just simply the monodimensional aspect of money. But the challenge that we have is that our data has become a currency that we cannot spend. Others spend it on our behalf, but we, on the other hand, seem to have very little ability to control that. And I don't think it's hyperbole to say that our data has been taken hostage. I think that the pending move by the data barons particularly, and I don't want to be clear, I don't think that all big tech companies are the same, but I think certainly the ones that the business model is predicated on selling social exploitation, if I can put it that bluntly, they sit in a different category. And I think that it's not right to say that they have taken our data hostage and taken our digital selves hostage, and their current incursions into the metaverse are cause for even greater alarm. But that's not to say that that's the way it has to be. And I think that I will, I think that we are at the cusp of a new crossroad with the Web3 innovations. I will say that there is a danger with Web3, though, in that if we are not careful and if we do not put the right safeguards in place, there is a possibility that Web3 could actually introduce a more pervasive, a more complete, a more integrated and holistic surveillance complex than the world we have today. So while of course we're all kind of get very excited about what Web3 can do in terms of delivering data sovereignty, if we do not put those right safeguards in place, there is a potential that the Web3 landscape could create more dystopian outlook. But that said, I think that the choice is in our hands. And I do believe that we finally do have the technology with Web3 technologies to actually command and demand data sovereignty and data ownership and data property rights in a way that is unprecedented and a way that is really will usher in a complete new data economy, a new era and framework of how data can be used. And what's going to be needed here? Well, I mean, we definitely need some universal standards, some basic rules and guidelines about what is right versus what is wrong in terms of how this data is going to be accessed and used. We also need governance, and we need immutable governance. I think immutable programmability is a doorway to having trustworthy governance. I was on a panel earlier this morning on identity in Africa, and someone made a really interesting point about the difference between trusted systems versus trustworthy systems. And clearly what we need is trustworthy systems that are underpinned by trustlessness. And that's really where Web3 really starts to show its potential. We have been saying for over a decade now with MetaMe that if data is the new oil, then we need a clean data energy system analogous to clean energy. And I think that that is the potential of Web3, and that is the potential of what we can do in terms of creating a new clean data economy. I think the dirty data economy, which is really predicated by coercion, surveillance, manipulation, exploitation, corporate centralization, is as toxic to society, as toxic and destructive to society as the carbon extractive fossil fuel, dirty fuel energy is to the environment. And you could even argue that the dirty data economy is even more destructive than the dirty energy economy because it pollutes our minds. It pollutes our ability to actually operate in a free and democratic manner. But this technology provides us with a new way forward. And this is what we've really been developing at MetaMe over the last few years, a new framework for a clean data economy that's based on principles of ethics, ethical data usage, under ethical data standards. We developed an ethical data standard framework with the British Standard Institute, based on universal principles of digital human rights, using dependable governance and dependable technology. So what is at the core of all of this? Well, at the core of this is a new type of data asset that we've created called a private obscure data store, or pod. And these pods effectively allow us to atomize data and collect it in these individual units. And this is the analogy that people have used in this past, like a shipping container for data. The idea is that you've got the core information set is something that is individualized and removed and encrypted and protected. And then it just has this shell around it, which is the only thing that is visible on the network, with a meta description of what it is that allows us to transact with it. But this obscurity of this data set, this hiddenness, this invisibility of it, gives the owner of it complete control around it. Plus, with smart contracts and immutable technologies, where you can embed real ethical principles around how that data is used into the system. In our universe, this is underpinned by this meta network of networks framework. It's underpinned, as I say, by ethical data standards, universal digital rights based on human rights. And we've been working with the UN towards achieving that. And then this MPOD protocol, where we create this smart data framework that allows us to be able to create these new units of information. And I think that that's really key, because that's essentially how we move forward here. And then we then bring all of this together in what we call a clean data operating system. And this is like a nano operating system, which is basically what the MetaMe platform is. And within this operating system, we then have an ecosystem of partners and applications and services that use these clean data asset components within them. So this is essentially, MetaMe introduces this clean data operating system, this nano OS, as we call it, a micro, which is a tiny operating system that's embedded within other operating systems, that allows us to have this a proliferation of services around this. So, and at the core of this, what all of this really enables is us to create a framework of sovereignty where we generate trusted data. And what do I mean by that? I mean, it's so, of course, one of the challenges of the notion of self-sovereign information is how reliable can information be if it is controlled by end users? But of course, I won't get into the technical details of how that's addressed today, but that can be done. And I think it is really important, in order to have a new healthy data economy, that we have trusted data. So that's data that we can believe in, and trustless data sharing, which essentially means that we need to be able to share data with third parties where we don't need to trust those third parties, because we can trust the network and the system that we're using to share that information to enforce the rules of how we want that data consumed. And this all together, if actually materialized, opens the door to a complete new economy, a clean data economy and a clean data framework. And I think it's important to note that it is my belief that the clean data economy of self will outperform the dirty data economy by orders of magnitude. And that's really comes down to a few reasons why. Because ultimately, as we move further into the metaverse and this quantum digital era that is upon us, it's clear that the real primary technology is AI. If you were to ask me what are the three most fundamental technologies of the next era, I mean, yes, you could say quantum computing, but ultimately that all just facilitates AI. It's AI, it's data. It's basically AI and data. That's really what everything comes down to. So now, why is this important? Why this is important, I should say, is because we all know that AI systems are only as good as the data that is used to develop and train them. So the arms race that we're in at the moment around the development around AI supremacy is going to come down to which AI development resource is going to have the highest quality data. And you might argue that centralized data is more efficient than decentralized data, but I think actually the converse is true. And we see this in all the systems we have today. The centralized data stores, whether it's Google, Facebook, Amazon, they all default to medians because that's the nature of what these systems, it's just the nature of how they're designed. They will always default to median values, the median norm. Whereas in a decentralized system, everyone is essentially at the edge. And by being at the edge, you are able to do a much better job of curating your information, particularly if you're incentivized to do it, than if you're not. Let me give you a simple example to prove my point. So imagine, for example, that we're developing an AI and we want it to recognize who your friends, we give it access to a Flickr account of all your photographs. And we ask the AI to recognize who are your friends versus who are your colleagues or associates. Now, if in a centralized model where you ask an AI to solve that challenge, think about what it would have to do to be able to figure out if someone was a friend or a colleague. It would, let's for argument's sake, say that, okay, it might start by going through your LinkedIn profile to see if this, and do photo matches between people in the picture and people's profile pictures on LinkedIn, but that might not give it enough data. So it probably would also have to go to Facebook and Instagram and match and trawl through all of those pictures of you there to be able to identify whether those people, to be able to, first of all, recognize those people and then figure out through the nature of the pictures you're taking with them, are they potentially friends or are they colleagues? But AI isn't that well advanced to be able to make that kind of deduction from analysis of photographs today. So it would have to go into more detail. It would go into your address book. It would go into your diary. So you see the level of incursion that has to happen for it to be able to answer a very simple question about whether a person in a picture is your friend or a colleague. Now compare the results of that output to a different model whereby we basically pay you, let's for argument's sake say 10 cents for going through 5,000 pictures of yourself and just swiping left or right depending on whether they're a friend or a colleague. First of all, think how much more quickly you would be able to get results, get results going through those 5,000 pictures than a machine. And think about how accurate your results would be versus the machine's results. So now if you, and think about what is the more valuable data set out of those two data sets, the one that's been arranged by surveillance and through external tracking versus the one where you paid the owner of that data to curate it on their behalf. Now think about taking those two data sets and feeding them to an AI. Which AI is going to outperform or two different AIs? Which AI is going to outperform the other? I think it's patently clear. So I say this to say because the economy of self is not solely predicated on principles of ethics and democracy and digital rights. It is predicated on those things, and those things alone make it vastly superior to the dirty data economy. However, economically, it will vastly outperform the dirty data economy because the quality of the data that will be generated from the economy of self is exponentially richer, greater than the quality of the data that comes from the dirty data economy. And that's why this economy of self is destined to become the new data economy, the new clean data economy, in a similar way to how renewables will eventually become, renewables and non-carbon energy will become the dominant form of energy on our planet and in our society soon. So that's just an introduction. I'm going to leave it at that, and I will take some questions.
Dele, I'm back. No, that was really interesting.
Right.
That
So
was,
I think Nikki's coming back.
yeah, I'm back. I'm back. Can you hear me all right, Dele?
All right. So I'm going to stop sharing. Stop presenting. There we go.
Okay, perfect. No, that was really interesting. A lot of great info there. A quick question, I guess I was thinking as I was going through that is, do you think more regulation will be introduced around this? You know, the new data economy by the EU. Are we wanting other people to help regulate this information? Are we pro or are we against that? Who has the final say on it, really?
You know, I think the regulator. So I think there's different kind of regulation, right? It's like there's different kind of law. There's the court of the judicial system, and then there's the court of public opinion. And I think that that plays out in this space as well. So I do think that regulators have a role to play, and you know, things like GDPR, PSD2 were a landmark. They changed the world already, and of course they're flawed and they have got their problems. And regulation is problematic for sure. And as an innovator, that is part of the challenge. But yes, I do think that there is a role for government in sort of setting the broad principles. I think then there's a role for industry in terms of standards. So we've worked with the British Standard Institute to create an ethical data standard as part of a big data standard. And I think that there's a role for, you know, establishing what best practice looks like, and for industry operating in that sense. But then I also think that there is a role for startups and innovators and enterprise, or you know, more tech innovation in that sense, in that context, because I think that this becomes a competitive opportunity. You know, I think it's a brand, becomes a marketing opportunity, a marketing competitive opportunity for brands if used in the right way. So all of those factors, I think, go into how things will change, like we saw with carbon footprints.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very good. And we've got one from the audience here. If I turn over to the audience, we've got Tristan. Let me bring this up on stage a second. How do we trust a network to share our data in a trusted system? I mean, how do we approach that? If we're all creating trusted systems, how do we trust these networks, and who should be trusted?
Well, I mean, I think we've tried to simplify the response to that question. I think we do that today. We do that with Ethereum. We do that with Bitcoin. We do that with Cardano. You know, that we've developed. This technology is no longer conceptual. It's no longer experimental. You know, the Web3 proposition is pretty tried and tested in terms of, you know, that we've developed a trustless network model with a massive incentive for, you know, corruption, for people to break it and to kind of, you know, subvert it and steal from it. You know, it's $2 trillion. We've created an incentive framework to test this proposition of trustless networks that has pretty much stood the test of time for the last 15 years. You could argue that certainly if you look at Bitcoin, but you could argue that the crypto net is as reliable as the internet, perhaps even more so. And the internet is the most reliable machine that man has ever made. So I think it's about perspective in terms of this question.